Okay. And then we'll, thank you.
We're right there.
Right there. All right, so here we are.
Yep, we're all
okay,
ready.
South Georgia, thank you so much for being with us. We're doing a recap of the Susan Embert murder trial. I'm Greg Lloyd along with Mackenzie Petrie. And Mackenzie, I want to start off by saying, with all sincerity, I'm your colleague and your friend, and I'm always proud of you, but you've done an exceptional job covering the trial. Within the last 2 weeks, because it started last week, and there's been a lot going on and there's a lot to unpack. And one of the first things that I wanted to ask you about today, if it was kind of started out as a slow day, there were only 2 witnesses. Let's talk about that first witness.
So, well, you mentioned a slow day. So the slow day, it was a lot of, if I could put my own percentage in there, I would say the jury was probably in the room for about 20% of the time, and 80% of the time was arguments. So, and arguments heard outside of the jury's presence. So not just arguing them, bickering, but the state trying to provide evidence, and then the defense trying to provide evidence to see to the judge, and she hears case law, and she hears if this should stay or if she shouldn't, and or if the evidence shouldn't be allowed. And I'm going to pull up my iPad here. And there's one quote from Judge Johnson where she says, "Don't give me emotion, show me the law." So that's what you hear all day in those arguments. She wants to hear the law because, as she also says, if there is a guilty verdict, or even if there's probably a not guilty verdict, either way, the case is probably going back to the appeals court. So she wants to make sure she's doing every single thing right. So slow day, but there's reasoning behind it, if I may say.
And Mackenzie, I wanted to ask you this too, when you were talking about how the lawyers, are going back and forth in their argument. This also means a lot of times the jury is asked to step out of the room.
Yep. And that's what I say when I say the jury was probably in there for 20% of the day today, and then 80% was the judge hearing the arguments on the case law and what should be allowed into evidence, what shouldn't be allowed into evidence. So it seems like a slow day. Behind the scenes, it's very impactful. It's a lot day, a huge day.
And Mackenzie, one other thing I wanted to ask you, because I know most of you all who are following the trial closely know there are times when you see us zoom into the flag or the exit sign and we cut the sound, and that's not a technical error.
Right.
We're doing that on purpose.
Yes, we are doing that on purpose, everyone. That is intentional. So don't give up on us just yet. When you see that exit sign or you see the flagpole, that is what we have to do under the court's order to whenever they go into sidebars or any type of conversations like that outside of the jury's presence. They don't want that, in the live stream as well. So don't give up on us. We still have it coming. But let's get to that first witness. I think that's what everybody wants. And the first witness was actually the last witness from yesterday who gave that jaw-dropping. Literally, when he said that, my whole team, we were like, what did he just say? Jaw-dropping testimony. And that testimony, I have to give the exact quote there, Greg, because the exact quote is, it's needed for that one. Here we are. Of course, I can't find it when I need it.
Oh, that's okay, Mackenzie. Take your time, my friend. And you got it? Okay.
The last witness from yesterday was the first witness from today. They resumed the testimony because, of course, they couldn't finish yesterday because of a lot of sidebars and stuff. And in that, in his testimony, he said, quote, that Susan told him, this is a business associate of Jake, Susan told him that, quote, her husband wasn't going to be here much longer because of his declining health. Now, what I did get from his testimony today was that when he spoke with Jake Embert had also told him that he had declining health. But the part that Jake didn't tell him was that he wasn't going to be here much longer. So that's the part that really stuck out, that really had everyone, clenching their purses, their jackets, like, wait, what did he just say? And this was given at the first trial as well, but this, when we heard it this time, everyone was just like, well, what did he just say? Other things to note from the testimony, I'm kind of fast forwarding here for the day. It wasn't his testimony, but they read Susan Embert's testimony. She's not going to testify in this trial. That was a big clinch as well. She's not going to testify in this third trial, but she did testify in the first trial. And today they read the transcript from the first trial from when she testified. And if I may say, from Jake's daughter Rachel testifying to the sister, to maybe the emergency 911 call, it was several different times where Susan gave an alibi to what she was doing when Jake Embert allegedly killed himself. And again, today it was a it was a change of the alibi again.
And Mackenzie, what was the mood like in that courtroom when they were reading that transcription from her previous testimony?
Susan, she shared a few tears. You could tell she was getting a little emotional as she heard the testimony, but the courtroom, it was kind of quiet, just everyone listening, tuned in to
soaking
see
up
what she said, since we now know that she's not going to testify again.
Yeah. So we that will be all that we'll hear from her, because she won't testify again. And I know the witness from today, as you were talking about earlier, Mackenzie, I think today he offered still some things that kind of made people really get their attention.
Yes. So they spoke on, this was, every day they say court's going to start. They tell the jury to get there at 8:30 or so. Court is going to start at 9. It keeps starting a little later because, again, the arguments and the evidence and the case law, Judge Johnson, she needs that case law to make sure she's doing everything right. And speaking to what you just asked me, as far as the first witness and some more stuff that he had put out there, he spoke on how, well, in those arguments, they spoke on what evidence he should be allowed to testify to. So there's some text messages, allegedly, of Susan texting him and maybe saying inappropriate things. I think they said shared inappropriate photos. Like, it was a lot of stuff that he felt was inappropriate. And Judge Johnson, she ended up saying, she ultimately ruled that he can testify and put into evidence the verbal communication conversations they had, but she didn't allow any text messaging conversations, and she totally ruled out any inappropriate photos. Like, her words, we're not going there. That's what she says. We're not going there.
And like you said, Judge Johnson really looking at the letter of the law, and she's anticipating, because we know in most trials there are appeals, and the judges are scrutinized very,
especially
absolutely,
this one.
and the judges, they're under a microscope.
Right, because in her first trial, I think it was a juror who may have been a felon, so that was a problem. Then there was a speedy trial, maybe violation or something like that, improper concern, something of that sort. So it went to the appeals court. They dismissed it. So, Judge Johnson doesn't want to run into any of that anymore. The second trial, it resulted in the mistrial. So she's really trying to make sure that, so if it's 80% time arguments, and that's just my opinion of it, a lot of the time they're hearing the case law, hearing the evidence, what should be allowed, what shouldn't be allowed, to make sure the case goes right. And then for the jurors, it was like 20-25% of them being in the room. And both days, today and yesterday, she actually they were hearing arguments, and she actually brought the jury back in. Like, I'm just going to send the jury home for today because we're not going to finish this anytime soon. I think she ended up sending the jury home today at 4:45. And it was, when I left the courtroom, it was 5:15, and they did not finish at 5:15, and courthouse closed at 5. So, I mean, working through lunches today, it slam packed.
And Mac, you are our eyes and ears for all of our viewers in the courtroom, and you were saying, just on your estimation, it's so valuable what you bring to the table in that estimation, because you're seeing, like you said, a lot of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. When we may see a lull of sorts, it's something is actually happening. They're talking about case law. The judge and the lawyers are consulting, and it's necessary business that the court is undertaking.
Yep, it is necessary business indeed. Let's get into some more of that transcript that she had. That transcript, the big 911 call, where she stated that she believed that her husband had killed himself because he was gay and he had transmitted diseases. Well, we got a glimpse of that transcript today, and it sounded totally different. She's like, I don't know why I said that. I don't, honestly, Greg, if I may say, it was unbelievable. I was just sitting there like, wait, what?
So, Mackenzie, her testimony that they read from the first trial kind of contradicted the 911?
Yes. Call? Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. So it kind of just had me like, wait a minute. Like, you don't know? And let's just play a little bit of that sound so that they can hear that, because it was pretty intense.
He also indicated that you contacted him about selling Jake's stuff behind Jake's back.
That's not true.
That you wanted to sell all manners of stuff in his shop.
That's not true.
None of that conversation or none of that testimony that was given was true, is what you're telling.
That's not true.
This?
No.
You never had that conversation?
No.
He represents that you texted him so many times, he had to tell Jake to put a check on you.
That's not true.
You didn't text him 20 or 30 times?
No.
You didn't send no picture of you in the Jeep?
No.
You didn't tell him repeatedly that Jake ain't going to be around much longer?
No.
But you knew that to be true, didn't you?
No, I did not know that to be true.
That Jake wasn't going to be around much longer?
No, I did not know that.
So you had to call it. He ain't going to be around much longer. Isn't that what you did?
No.
Okay, so that actually wasn't the sound that I was looking for, but that does go back to the point where the business associate of Jake's that testified saying that Susan told him that, quote, her husband wasn't going to be around much longer due to his declining health. That's what that sound went to. And as you can see there, she's like, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But he testified to that in this trial, and he testified to it in the first trial as well.
Oh, wow. And you know, Mac, being in the courtroom, and we want to point out, too, if people are just joining us, you didn't see Susan's mouth moving just now, even though that was her testimony from the first trial.
Yes.
Because they had someone in a court official read it?
Yes, they had a court official reading the transcript of her first trial. That is very important to note for the people. They had someone in court reading the transcript. So, like, you had the attorney saying their part, and then there was someone on the stand who was acting as if she was Susan and reading what Susan responded back while Susan, you know, sat with the defense staff.
Mac, did the I wondered about this. Did the defense attorneys today give a lot of pushback before that transcript was read? Was there a lot of fighting when the jury was sent out, you know, over should we let this transcript be read?
I don't remember pushback, and I'm not sure because there's so much going on.
I
know.
You know, you're remembering a lot.
I'm just a news reporter, news anchor. I don't really know the court jargon as much, but I'm learning it. I'm getting it. I actually love it now that I'm getting there. But I'm not sure if they argued a lot about if it should be allowed.
Yeah.
I do believe that they were going to allow it, but there was a lot of marking out what should be allowed and what shouldn't, because, you know, there's some poisoning and stuff that was mentioned in the first trial that's been excluded from this trial, so they had to mark some of that stuff out. And also they're making sure the jurors on for this trial don't know that this is the third trial, because, you know, in Quadir they ask stuff like that, like, do you know who Susan Embert is? Have you ever heard about the case where she killed her husband? And did you hear about any poisoning stuff? So they're asking stuff of this, so they're making sure, you know, that is marked out of the testimony that they're reading today, because it was allowed in the first trial, but it wasn't allowed in this one. So that's what a lot of the argument was about on. And again, of course, when I say argument, I don't just mean bickering and stuff, but like presenting case law and stuff on what should be allowed in this and what shouldn't be allowed. Like, we can't say it's a trial, we have to say a hearing, and we can't say former testimony, or you have to say when they testified at a hearing. Like, they're trying to reserve from the jurors that this is the third trial.
And you know, Mac, I love what you pointed out earlier. When you do say arguing, we want to point out too that Judge Johnson has kept it very professional. We mean arguing in the most professional sense, because like you said, she said, don't give me emotion, show me law. So Judge Johnson expects people to be on point with their case law, and if even an objection, you need to bring the proof or your evidence to back it up.
What you just said, if you know Judge Johnson, she has said it a million times. Show me the case law. I feel like I sound just like her at this point. Show me the case law.
There's a lot to be said for that, because it does keep the courtroom, you know, on task and keeps it professional.
That is what she's going for. She's like, come on, y'all. We got to move it around. We got to move it on. We got to move it on. Like, we can't. This is again the third trial. We just had this trial at the end of December as well, and we got to move it along.
Well, Mac, I could talk to you all night, because I just love hearing your thoughts. And one thing I wanted to ask you before we left, and we want to talk about everything you want to speak on, but you know, this case, as you mentioned, it's received you know, national attention even. Why do you think people, and we know locally people are really interested in what happens, but why do you think it even has that national allure to it?
If I may say, I think it's the third trial thing. Because when I was talking to like experts and just one of the lead investigators, or private investigators, I should say, that is handling the Susan Embert family, not Susan Embert family, the Jake Embert family. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
The private investigator that is dealing with them, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. No, we're talking about why it's attracting so much national.
Yes. When I spoke with him, he said, I mean, I've never seen anything like this. So I think that's the main reason. And also, we've been following it from the beginning, but Dateline is in there. I'm not sure if everyone knows about Dateline NBC. They're in the courtroom. I think like a true crime podcast had entered the courtroom after the fact. At first, it was just us and Dateline. Now you have podcasters, you have court TVs trying to get, like, everybody's trying to get in because they're like, third trial, like, second trial results in a mistrial after the first trial the first case was dismissed. Like, this is different, that's different. That's not something you see every day. So I think that's why so many people are tuned in.
And so, Mac, looking ahead to tomorrow, because I know you got to be up and be in court in the morning, we're expecting for the defense to call their first witnesses?
Yes, the defense. I'm not sure exactly how many witnesses they're going to call, but the state called their final witness today, which was that private investigator that I just told you all about. And within his testimony, they just talked a little bit about, I don't know if you remember when Coroner Fowler testified, they were really stuck up about the date on the suicide cause of death sheet. I don't know exactly what to call it. And then the homicide cause of death sheet.
Because all that paperwork, you're absolutely right. I don't know that they ever called it.
I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but that final testimony from the private investigator is a lot of what that was about. So we have a little bit of that. We did live stream a little bit of that earlier as well. So the defense, I'm not sure exactly how many witnesses they're set to call, but I know that they do plan on calling a Willis, and I think he's an investigator, maybe with the GDI or FBI, I'm not sure exactly, but I do know they plan on calling in an expert witness, and I'm not sure how many more after that, but they do say they're hoping that the trial can wrap by Thursday.
Well, Mackenzie, I know a lot of people miss you on late night, and that's why if you've been wondering, well, you're so sweet. But if you've wondered where Mackenzie's been, she's been working days going to the trial, and I just want to say again that I'm so proud of you professionally and personally, and you're so special to me, but you have done just an amazing job for WALB in covering this Embert trial, and I just want to say hats off to you, because I know it's a tough job, but you're excelling and keeping the public informed.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Fun fact, I was actually requested by Jake's family to do this trial because they saw previous trial coverage that I did, so it makes me feel good.
That's something when the family wants you to do it. Yeah.
Thank you so
Mackenzie,
much.
thank you for taking time to talk to us. And South Georgia, thank you for tuning in. Of course, we'll have another update about court tonight on Late Night at 11, and thanks for joining us.
Of course.